We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. Well, we're changing some things up for this episode. I'm in the hot seat. I will be the guest, and my colleague, Dan Presser, is going to be doing the interviewing today. Dan, Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thanks for letting me come on the show and talk with you.
Usually I'm not nervous, but being in this guest seat, I'm a little nervous. Take it easy on me.
No need to be nervous at all. And you know what, though? That's true. It's much easier to ask questions than to answer questions. I've always found, too.
Yeah, and you feel more in control. Like, I do not feel in control right now.
Right. Oh, wait till you get some of these questions I have.
Oh, man.
No, it's a great honor for me to really be on the show and also to learn more about you and your company, because the show's been fun to watch, and it'll be great to know a little bit more about you and how you got it all going.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things I really want to know is just tell me about your family.
Yeah, so I have one boy. He is 27 years old. Very proud of him. He's in the Army National Guard, and he does Army Band is what his MOS, but his full-time position is doing Honor Guard, which is doing funerals. And he absolutely enjoys bringing honor to the fallen veterans.
Very important work.
He's also a music kid, so his side hustle right now, but he wants to turn it into something when he retires, is he loves recording music. So we got him involved in music at a young age. So he does recording, mixing, writing, singing, all of it. Does
he have a studio? Or?
He does in his bedroom. He's got this amazing lighted studio, and it's just crazy how he's pulled this all together. The other thing, just the magic of the internet, his friend, his roommate, his best friend from high school, they're actually producing an album together, and it's going to be sold over in Sweden.
Wow.
Yeah.
So mom is plugging already, even before the album's ready, right?
Yeah, so very proud of that kiddo.
That's pretty cool.
I do say that I have kids everywhere because of, the career that I've had being a child care professional. Was a former foster parent, still connected with him. So he is 21 now.
Wow. And
22, sorry, he just turned 22. And we had him when he was 6.
I'm glad you caught that. He would have been really upset.
I know. So, so I say I have one biological, but then just with all the kids I've helped, I got kids everywhere.
So is that, you had your own child and then you've been a foster parent. Is that why you started your company? I mean, tell us more about the company and how you got that started.
Yeah, so so the company started out of the pandemic. Before that, my career was being a child care professional, and my focus and specialty is working with families who have kids that have behavioral issues. Those issues can be due to autism, ADHD, trauma, sometimes reinforced by some poor parenting choices, a multitude of reasons. So that's been, my main focus. Then, during the pandemic, of course, parents really didn't have a break And the behavioral issues were now really in everybody's face. And a lot of the motivating factors that happened because you maybe had the good peer pressure at school, that accountability piece, you had teachers that were encouraging. Now that's all fallen on the parents. So there was just a lot of struggles going on. So I was approached by Fairway Mortgage to offer parenting support, doing webinars, for their company. And so that was the birth of Parenting Game. Now, I always kind of had a logo, had an idea for several years, but hadn't really pursued it, and now had the opportunity to fully jump into it, get the company going. And then it was the process with the help of a lot of friends and a lot of encouragement, a lot of question asking is, how do you do what you do?
Yeah.
And then that was the biggest, hardest piece. They're like, how do you do what you do? And I'm like, I just go in and do it. But they're like, you go into a home that's chaos, and like within 4 months, it's like a different home. Like, how do you do that? Slowly got that out. So then, now I do coaching and consulting and have a playbook, a parenting playbook that's published. And so that's how it came to be. You have done a lot already, and the pandemic was only started 2 years ago. Well, I guess it's almost 3 years. We're going to be 3 years in March. I guess it actually had started in January. Yeah.
So, but a lot has happened in those 3 years,
Yeah.
or almost 3 years. Where did your passion come from? Did you have experiences as a child or as a parent of your own to do this?
So I've recently, written a story, wrote my story. I had the privilege of being a co-author in a new book that will be coming out, Engaging Speakers, Voices of Truth. And it was writing.
The cover's out, I hear.
Yes, the cover's out. You can see it on my Facebook page. So that really pulled out of me. I had an idea of why. I loved working with these kids. I always just had a desire, was never afraid of kids with extreme behaviors, and had a knack for figuring out how to calm them down and get them re-engaged. With writing this chapter, it caused me to really dig into what that was. And I grew up in an abusive home, and there was a lot of yelling. And I recently just realized, if I can get to these kids, because typically I've worked with boys, I've had some girls, but if I can get to these kids at an early age, help them to self-regulate, build up that self-esteem, then maybe they won't pull that all forward and have not be as good of a parent as they can be. So I guess really I'm, trying to prevent my dad from happening, again.
Yeah.
And
is there almost like a PTSD type of a situation for children like yourself who maybe had trauma or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It took work. That's one thing too. When I look back at my story, I really owned. I was not the perfect parent.
Well, who is?
Yeah, and I was seeing that I was pulling forward some of those poor parenting choices. And for me, one of them was yelling. And people know me now and they're like, I cannot even picture you yelling. But I was a yeller to the point I would throw things. And one day I saw my son out with one of his buddies just laying into him. He was like 4 years old. And of course, I get angry. I'm like, how dare he talk to somebody like that? And I was just ready to burst through the door and let him have it. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. He learned that from me. And that, I'd already started, reading when I knew I had a boy. I started reading, Bringing Up Boys, and started self-educating. But I would say right there was the pinnacle of, I need to get some help and get healthy because I'm pulling some things forward, and just really delve in even more about self-educating. And then I became a foster parent and a therapeutic foster parent. And the training was really intense. I absolutely loved it, learned so much. And just from there, it just grew. Just after seeing this boy who was just a hot mess become this loving boy, get successfully adopted, that just really started my passion of, of digging in and then learning and applying and what would work, what didn't work. So that's where it all came from.
Why the parenting game? Why?
So this is interesting. I was working with a family, and I was becoming quite frustrated with getting the behaviors to change. And so even as a professional, don't always have good days. And I was reading I was reading the Talent Code, which is just a great book about deep practice and just the science behind how our brains works and how we can learn new things by practicing. And I was reading that book at the time, so I'm sure this is where this word came from, but I just remember looking at the two kiddos and going, can you just practice putting your napkin on your lap already? And like they did it. And it caught my attention. And I stopped and I'm like, what did I say that for the first time in several months that they just did it? And I realized it was the word practice. So out of that, I just started taking all the tools and coming at it from an approach of how we teach our kids to read, ride bikes, how we teach them sports. And that often as parents, we demand behavior change and then we get compliance in the moment, but it's never long-term and we're frustrated again. But because of how our brains work, behavior change needs to be practiced, just like with starting a new habit.
Right.
And that's where, parenting game kind of came out of. Also, I wanted it to be appealing to men. A lot of times, the parenting titles, parenting approaches, the colors, everything are very fluffy, very pastel. And I do have a heart, for helping dads find their dad voice. And your dad voice isn't yelling. Your dad voice can have power without that. And the whole playbook and what I teach is all about having the proper stance, practicing behavior, your language. We have plays, and if you do this play, this is the win. Yep. And so that's how it all came out of that.
It kind of reminds me a little bit, a while back, there was a Navy admiral who did it was a commencement speech, and it's on YouTube, and I'm sure everybody has seen it, but he always talked about do the reps. And so that kind of fits into that whole, practice, do the reps, get up in the morning, make your bed. That's the first thing you do every day, but it kind of follows along with what you're saying, where you've got to practice, get better at it. If you're working out, you got to do the reps.
Yeah.
And so that, as a man, I do relate to that.
Yeah, the parents have to practice the accountability pieces and the follow-through pieces. And then the kids need time. And it really takes the pressure off. This is one of the things I really love about it, is now everybody's on the same page that this is something that needs to change in our family, and we're gonna practice it. Yeah. And this is what it looks like. And it may not work, and we may have to go back and tweak it. And it doesn't mean that there isn't results for undesirable behavior, but we can over-reward and we can over-punish, and then we just cause confusion and we just don't get long-lasting, results. Yeah. Whereas with this, and as I teach it, it's kind of funny that the kids are then involved in, okay, this wasn't, this is an undesirable behavior, what should the result be? And you include them in that, and kids will always punish themselves way worse. I mean, they'll come up, I need to be grounded for like 10 years. And I'm like, oh, well, I think going and taking a break for an hour, and then, you can kind of look like the hero, how generous am I to take it from 10 years to an hour? Yeah,
it's good to be the good
But yeah,
guy.
So it's not about, not, showing kids that there's results for certain type of behavior, but it's also just releasing the pressure that you don't always have to have a punishment on hand. There can be some grace there, and, just, hey, what are we practicing? Oh, yeah, because the other thing is sometimes when we think kids aren't doing what we ask, we automatically think defiance, and that's rarely the case. I would say maybe 10 to 20% is the case of just outright defiance. Yeah. Usually it can be a wealth of different reasons, and this lets you find out the reason. that it wasn't, I just forgot or whatever.
Yeah. Usually it was just absent-mindedness with my kids.
Yeah, or they got out of their routine, then it may be that, I just don't want to. And I've had some great discussions with kids around the, I just don't want to. Well, when you can talk through a reason, then it usually solves itself.
How do you get to that point where you can have those smart, those good conversations with children? Because a lot of times your first inclination is to just tell them as opposed to ask them.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of different things. Power of the pause is one thing that I teach. Often as parents, we feel we need to act and solve this right now. And pausing and taking some time will never harm the situation. It will always make it better. So I just say, just take a moment. Sometimes if you've gotten a big blindside by a behavior you didn't expect, take the day, and just say, this is not the kid you are. You're a smart, loving kid. I'm really surprised by this behavior. I need some time to think of what to do. The other piece that I usually teach right out of the gate is some language to build psychological safety. That's becoming more in the forefront of the work world as well. But if your kids don't feel safe telling you something, you're just not going to have good communication. So there's a language, and anybody who knows, who've seen my webinars and taken coaching, I always say this, it's help me understand what is or what was going on with not putting on your boots today, not, taking care of your chores today. And that, when you come at them with why, why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
You're automatically putting somebody on defense, right? And now I got to defend myself. Whereas when you say that help me understand, you're inviting them into understanding, and I yet have to be lied to, and sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't think that. And it's so part of my language. I use it, with my friends, with my family.
Right.
When you teach this,
you've practiced it.
Yeah, it does. And then there's times too where I, in the heat of the moment or working with a family okay, there's sometimes I just don't want to put the effort in, just like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, help me understand. It does take time and intentionality.
Yeah.
But the relationship that you build when it is safe for your kids to talk to, it's this amazing. I cannot tell people enough until they experience and they're like, wow, that really worked.
Sometimes it doesn't seem to, as a parent of older children now, it seems to click in as they get older for a parent, because suddenly you see them as adults or people who are on an equal level with you. And sadly, too often that comes late. It comes later than you wish it would have.
Yeah.
But you have to have some grace with yourself too.
Yes, and you do the best you can until you know better.
Yeah.
But I can confidently say, I've used this with just even little ones who aren't very verbal.
Yeah.
They still sense it, and I have a great. The little one was about, I would say about 10 months old, kind of having a meltdown. I just got down. I said, "Help me understand what's going on right now." And she could. I have no idea what she said. I said, "Do you feel better?" "Yep," and went off and played. But she just knew it was safe, whatever, came out. And, same, so I've used it from young, all the way up to my mom. We were getting her estate planning done, dragging her feet. I was getting frustrated. When you teach this stuff and your friends hold you accountable with it. So my friend goes, "Well, did you go to your mom and ask her and go, help me understand, Mom, why you don't want to get your estate planning done?" And I just looked at her. I'm like, "No, but I will when I see her tomorrow."
It's a good reminder.
I know, and I did. And my mom's like, "I just hate thinking that I'm going to die." And I'm like, oh, yeah. That kind of sucks. But once she got that out, then we went and we got it, all done. So, I'm so confident in
Simple
it just
solution.
because, it's really, really powerful. So that's, no matter where the kids are at, that's where I start parents is, we have to build psychological safety. And there's more to that too. Like, don't fix things for them. Don't tell them not to feel that way.
So would those fall into your core principles, so to speak, or what are the core principles?
Yeah, so the core principles, for one is, capability wins over entitlement. So if you don't allow your kids to be capable and do things on their own, figure things out on their own, that's what entitlement is, right? That everybody else needs to fix things for me and do things for me. The other is that character wins over reputation. And this is really, really powerful because sometimes our parenting choices are made out of just squelching a behavior and saving our own reputation and embarrassment. So we give in at the grocery store. And now every time we go to the grocery store, we have a fit, with the kid. Or we're worried about our child's reputation. So we may go in and fix something when they should really kind of suffer the results of what they did. And that's gonna, if you do that piece of letting those things happen, you'll have character.
Yeah.
And the other important thing about reputation, and John Wooden is the one who said this, is your reputation is what other people think. You can't control that anyway. The only thing you have in your control is your character. And then the final principle is that learning wins over punishment. Again, not that there aren't results for behaviors, but you want your kids to learn something. You just don't want them to stop doing something because they fear a punishment.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to learn how to do better. They're going to learn to avoid. They're going to learn to maybe not do what really is the right thing because they've gotten so concerned about punishment. So there's a lot of adverse things that can happen.
Not tell the truth.
Yeah, with over punishing. So I like using the word result.
Yeah.
There are sometimes going to be results you like, depending on your behavior, and then there could be results you don't like, depending on your behavior. And that's all in your control.
Yeah.
And if we have a result that you don't like because a behavior was undesirable, we're also going to take a moment and learn how to do better.
So we've heard a lot about the parenting game so far, and some of this is already apparent, but how would you say parenting game is different from all of those other types of programs out there or people out there trying to do it?
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to make sure to have, just because parents are so busy, our attention is much shorter than it used to be, is it's a hybrid of consulting and coaching is what I do. And initially out of the gate, if parents are coming to me, they're at the end of their rope and they're tired. And not that they're not capable of developing their own answers. They really just want to know what to do. And so these are just short, easy strategies that can be implemented quickly that I'm confident you'll see results, right away. So that's one part of it. The other part is that they're, like it's not an overarching philosophy. Like I have those core principles. Like I could go to you and say, well, character, wins over reputation.
Yeah.
Which
I remember now.
Yeah, go do that. Go build character in your kids and don't worry about their reputation. And you're like, well, that sounds great. Yes, I want my... How do I do it?
Right.
And a lot of times you read a parenting book and you get this overarching, like, this is how it should be. But I don't, I need something. Like, what do I say right now? So a lot of it is simple language changes, very bite-sized pieces. Is there some overarching philosophies? Yes. But I would say the main difference is you're going to get these bite-sized pieces you can implement right away.
Yeah.
And you don't need to read the whole book. You don't need to wait to get to the end of the coaching sessions. Like every time we meet, you are going to have an actionable strategy that I know will change the atmosphere in your home.
Has it been what you expected it would be when you started?
It's taken, I am surprised on how deep the relationships become with my clients. And I really have, not that I didn't before, but as I grow in this, I'm so honored on how they invite me into their home. I mean, I think about too when I was like a young mom, you know, and some families hire me directly, and I'm working in their home, and I'm like, there is no way in heck I think I would let another woman be that, you know, involved in my home.
It's hard to have other people watching, so to speak.
Yeah, so I really honor that they allow me to be in their home that intimately, what they share. I mean, one of the best comments from a dad that I was working with, and we switched more into coaching, so we've been doing some of his work too over a year, and he goes, you know, I have my mom I tell everything to, you know, my ex-wife, the mother of my kids, you know, tell her everything. I got a great buddy, tell him everything. But he goes, you know everything. And that really, you know, hit me. And I really value and I care for what these families share with me. And I mean, I have not lost contact with any of my clients, and they know once you've worked with me, like you have access to me, email, text, you know, every once in a while I'll get one. I'm like, okay, like I am having this situation. Can you give me a quick, you know, advice or whatever? And absolutely do that. So that is not what I was, you know, expecting. I thought I'd be coaching and they move on, and what keeps me in the game of what I do is the relationships, you know, that I've built, and just how honored I am that people invite me, you know, into their families.
We're running out of time here, but real briefly, does that keep you healthy too? I mean, it's hard to be who you are or helping like that and keep yourself healthy.
Well, every good coach has a coach.
There you go.
So I have my own coach who helps keep me in line, making sure that, you know, I'm taking that time. So yes, so I have my own health and wellness routines. Every 3 months, I take off. You know, I go get a hotel for 2 days and peace out.
Or you let somebody like me host the show and ask you some questions. I'm not actually hosting, but I get to ask the questions.
Yeah,
so.
Well, you're an amazing host.
It's been an honor, again, to learn more about the parenting game.
Thank
and you, Christine. And
Thank you.
So happy that everybody watched today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Well, I won't, but Christine will on the parenting game.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.